us, but we also have to take it by faith. We have to stretch our faith to take it. Fourth, you cannot reach your potential without stretching. If you want to be all that God wants you to be, you're going to do some stretching. You have to do some growth. You have to increase in one way or the other. There has to be some changes. So whether it's giving birth to things, expanding, receiving something that is offered, or becoming all that God wants us to be, actualizing our potential, all of these require stretching. It's going to be pulling, there's going to be pushing for us to be able to become all that God expects us to be. With that in mind, let's go to our main text for my series, and that is found in the book of Isaiah, chapter 54, and we will read verses 1 to 3. Isaiah 54, 1 to 3. Isaiah is primarily a book of prophecy. Isaiah was a prophet, and God raised him to speak concerning the past and current and future condition of Israel. He warned them about what was going to happen. He told them about what will happen after they had gotten into what was going to happen. So Isaiah's messages were very prominent for the development of Israel at a point in its history. And Isaiah chapter 54 is very well positioned because it comes after chapter 53. Chapter 53 is the messianic prophecy about Jesus Christ, his coming, his suffering, and the redemption that we'll have as a result of that. And chapter 54 goes along in that same theme. And most of you will be familiar with the 17th verse of chapter 54, where it says, no weapon that is formed against you shall prosper. Most of you quote it all the time. But it begins from verse number 1. And let's hear the reading from verse 1 to verse 3 of Isaiah chapter 54. Sing, O barren, you who have not borne. Break forth into singing and cry aloud, you who have not labored with child. For more are the children of the desolate than the children of the married woman, says the Lord. Enlarge the place of your tent, and let them stretch out the curtains of your dwellings. Do not spare, lengthen your cords, and strengthen your stakes. For you shall expand to the right and to the left, and your descendants will inherit the nations and make the desolate cities inhabited. This is part of what God says concerning Israel when it has suffered desolation as a result of being conquered, being exiled, and so on. God is promising a new era. And God likens Israel to a widowed woman who has been abandoned, who has no child. And he likens the whole nation to that and begins to speak to them concerning the promise for the future and what was going to happen. And there are two kinds of conditions that he addresses. The first one is the barren, to the barren. A barren person is one who fails to bear fruit, one who is unable to bear fruit. And in this case, God describes the whole nation of Israel to a barren person. Now you have to understand that when God is speaking about barrenness here, he is not limiting the analogy to barrenness as it occurs in a woman, because he's talking to a nation, and a nation has got men and women. So he calls both the men and the women barren. And then he calls even those who have children in that nation as barren. So the barrenness God is talking about here is not really a barrenness in terms of a person's inability to give birth in the natural. He's using barrenness as a figure of speech to address a national condition. God is addressing the nation and its people, both men and women, those who have children and those who have no children. He calls them barren. In other words, you are not producing results. You are not becoming fruitful. You've worked so hard, but you have nothing to show for it. You are barren. And then he promises the barren, and he says, you will sing and you will shout. You will break forth with singing, and you will break forth into shouting. Obviously, whatever will make a barren person sing is that they begin to produce results, that they begin to produce fruit, that their negative situation is turned around and they are able to produce the results they couldn't produce before. So God speaks about a negative situation, and then he portrays a positive one. You are barren, but you're going to sing. You have no child, but you're going to rejoice. Second analogy, he calls them the desolate. A desolate one is one who is alone and forsaken. And in this context, it is referring to a woman who, as a result of not being able to give birth, has been divorced by the husband. So she's barren and she's being cast away. Or a woman who is barren while she is married, and then the husband dies. So her situation becomes worse. She becomes desolate. She's alone, she is forsaken, and she has nobody to even partner with her to produce a child. And so God says, you are desolate. You don't have anybody to help you. You don't have a partner. You are alone. You've been cast aside. But then he says, you're going to have children. You're going to produce results. You're going to have abundance. So God takes the analogy and applies it to a nation or a people who have been abundant. Even in good times when things were together, they couldn't produce results. Now they've been abundant, but God says, you will have abundance. You are looking forward that things will happen, but nothing seems to happen. And God comes to you and says, you're going to sing. And God comes to you and says, you're going to have abundance. As a matter of fact, the way God puts it, he says that the desolate woman, that is the widowed woman, or the single woman who is alone, is going to have more children than the one who is married. So what he's saying is, you who are alone, who have nobody to help you, you are going to succeed far more than those who have people to help them. You who have nobody to hold your hand, I'm going to bless you so much that you will increase more than those who have people to hold their hand. So God speaks about a time when people who are alone, who are desolate, who have no helper, who have no strength, who have nobody to help them, receive help far more than those who have the help coming to them naturally. Obviously, this is a condition that should bring joy, that should bring gladness, and that should bring encouragement to Israel. But then he goes on to verse 2. And verse 2, he tells them some things. And there are 4 things he says there. He says, you have to enlarge your tent, you have to stretch, you have to lengthen, and you have to strengthen. He tells them to do 4 things. In other words, if you don't do these 4 things, although I have promised you, you will have children and you rejoice, these things will not come to pass. Because God's promises to us are fulfilled when our obedience and preparation is complete. When God makes a promise to you, there will be a part you must play. We always say that God's promises are conditional. You must obey something and you must prepare for something. And until you obey and prepare, that prophecy and promise will keep hanging. So he says to the barren, you will sing. To the desolate, you have children. But before that happens, you have to do some things. There's going to be some changes that must occur in your life. And he says in verse 2, you have to enlarge the place of your tent. I like the way that the Message Bible puts the verse 2. And I'll read that to you. The Message Bible, which has a more modern translation and speaks in a more modern way, says, Clear lots of ground for your tents. Make your tents large. Spread out. Think big. Use plenty of rope. Drive the tent pegs deep. I like the place where it says, think big. God says, I'm going to do some great things for you, but you also have to do something to accommodate what I'm going to do for you. And that will require some stretching. So what is Israel supposed to do? I mentioned 4 things. I'm going to focus on 2 of them for today, and next week we'll pick up on the rest. Number 1, he says, enlarge the place of your tent. Enlarge the place of your tent. Now, I have preached on this verse quite a few times. And the earlier times when I have preached on it, I thought I read it well, but I didn't really read it well. Because when I read it the first time, I seemed to think that God was saying, enlarge your tents. And I actually have a message, enlarge your tents. Because that's how I saw the verse. God said, enlarge your tents. But as I went back to the verse, I saw God didn't say, enlarge your tents. He said, look at that verse again. He said, enlarge the place of your tent. Not the tent, but the place where you have put the tent. And that is a big difference from enlarging your tent. Enlarge the place of your tent. That means that you have to inspect the ground you have put the tent on. You have to look at the place you selected. You have to look at the size of the land. And you have to look at whether the size of the land is proportionate to the tent you want to build. Because the size of your tent is determined by the space you allocate for it. So he says, enlarge the place of your tent. Enlarge the ground. Enlarge where you put the tent. That's the first thing you have to do. Enlarge the place of your tent. Now, if I want to enlarge this building and increase its size, I can't change the dimensions of this building except if I go back to the ground and increase the ground. So I have to go around and dig new foundations around this building if I want to enlarge the place of my auditorium. Is that right? If you tell me enlarge the auditorium, I have to first enlarge the ground, the place of the auditorium. And that's what God is saying, enlarge the place of your tent. How do you do that? 4 ways I'm going to show you. Number 1, you have to review your basic beliefs and your views. Review your basic beliefs and views. Because where you place your tent and the size you allocate to it is based on the basic idea you had from the beginning. Let me give you an example. Granting a person is going to build a house. Maybe he's living as a tenant in another person's house. He's being chased about, he's being harassed, he's uncomfortable, and now he wants to build his house. Because he's in a haste, he wants to build a house very quickly. So he buys a piece of land somewhere, and sometimes when you are in a haste to build a house, especially in Ghana, you don't care where the land is. You don't care. Because you are unhappy, you want to build. So you go and get a piece of land, and the piece of land may be by something that is not palatable. Maybe near a rubbish dump or near something that is no good. I don't want to go into details, but something that is no good. But that's where you got the land. And the reason you would take that land is because of the pressure that is sucking you from where you are. So you go and get this land and you want to build. Your idea is that you want to build quickly. So you tell the architect or whoever draws the plan, so I just want a 2-bedroom house, 2-bedroom and a hall. Quickly, 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 quickly. I don't want anything complicated. Simple 2-bedroom. I want to move quickly. That's your idea. Then the building starts shooting up. It gets to the lintel level and you go into the building and you say, this thing is too small. But it's okay. I need to move. So you finish the 2-bedroom, and then you move from where you are, which probably is a 3-bedroom, into your 2-bedroom, which is yours, and you realize, although you were trying to solve a problem, you have created a big problem. All right? Now you want to solve the problem you have created. You can't go to the contractor and say, add another room. Because he can't add another room just like that. If he wants to add another room, he has to enlarge the place, the land size. Because he has to make another foundation. Now, if you had used up all the land, then it means he can't even enlarge the house again. So if you want to enlarge, then you have to now go and get another piece of land. So when God says enlarge the place of your tent, it means you have to review the idea that made you start doing what you are doing in the first place. Let me give you another example. When we were building this auditorium, we got this land, acquired it on a good leasehold, and we wanted to move very quickly from Baden-Powell Memorial Hall. And we wanted to move here because at Baden-Powell Hall, we were scattered all over, so many people sitting outside. I said, let's get a place and let's build quickly. So we had two plans, the main hall and the youth hall to build. But I look at the main hall, I say it's too big. And we don't have time. We have to move quickly. So I told the contractor, let's do the small hall. This one, the youth hall. So we invested into the youth hall. And I didn't really bother because first we wanted to move quickly. That was my idea, my view, the place of my tent. Let's move quickly. Secondly, this place was about 3 times the size of Baden-Powell Hall. And it was big. Most of those who came from Baden-Powell Hall to this place, the first day they got here, they said, wow. This place is big, oh. So we thought, oh, this is big. And then I look at our cash flow and I said, oh, let's start this and later we'll build the main one. So we did this foundation. We built this place, roofed it, brought the church here. Those of you who came in the first time, you remember the first day we came to church, we overflowed the church. From day one, people were sitting outside and they've been sitting outside since then. So it means that the idea I had from the beginning was too small. So God wants to bring in people, but the idea I had was too small. Why did I have the idea? Because I was in a hurry. Because I thought there was no much money. We wanted to do something quickly and there was pressure on us to move. And based on all that, I established the place of this house. Now we have filled the place. People sit on the grass. So I said, this thing is not good. I mean, how can I have a church every time people sit outside? So we have to accommodate. And the only way to do that is now to go to heaven. So we're going up. Do you see how an original idea can sometimes hinder your potential? The idea you started with can hinder you in the future. That's why God says, enlarge the place, not the tent, but the place you have selected for the tent, enlarge it. Because many times when we start doing something, the initial idea we start with is a small idea. And then after some time we realize that small idea cannot accommodate the growth that is coming. But we are unable to do anything because we find it difficult to go back and change the original idea. It's like somebody who starts a business. And the reason they start a business is I just need money, just a little money. I'm not looking for much. So they start the business in the backyard of their house. The business has grown in the backyard of the house. Now it should be in the central business district. But it's not going to the central business district. Why? Because the original idea was that it should be a backyard thing. So although God is blessing the business, that blessing is not showing because the foundation idea is wrong. So God says to Israel, I want to bring you much. I want to increase you, but the place you have even demarcated for me to bless you in is too small. So you have to change the place of your tent. Many times we start doing things like that. Even marriage. A lot of times when people marry, the idea that took them into marriage is very different from the marriage they have married. It's true. People marry for so many reasons. Sometimes they say, I'm growing. I have to marry. Or for whatever reason, maybe they think they have to do some things. And they don't want to do it outside marriage. They have to marry to do it. So quickly, they go through counseling. Quickly, if they say counseling is 5 weeks, they say it's too short. Give me 2 weeks. Just quickly. What are we wasting time for? So they marry. Then they realize that what they wanted to do, yes, they've done it. And they are doing it. But marriage is more than doing that. But the original idea was not to even live with somebody for life. The original idea was that I am burning. I need water to cool myself. So you go and marry and realize it's more than that. That the person you have married, much as they are able to satisfy your immediate needs, they also have other things about their life. They talk too much. They don't respect. They don't know how to clean themselves well. And then you realize this thing is far bigger than the original idea I started with. When that happens, you have to enlarge the place of your tent. Because if you don't do that, that marriage you have entered in will collapse on your head. So God says to Israel, enlarge the place, not the tent itself, where you've put it. Change it. Because if you don't, it will collapse. Secondly, enlarging the place of your tent means that you have to re-examine the impact of your past choices. Re-examine the impact of your past choices. Now, anytime I look at this auditorium, I hit myself on the head because I saw that I was so narrow-minded when I was building this place. Narrow-minded. I tell all ICGC pastors, I say, when you're going to build a church, don't build it the way we built Christ Temple. It was a mistake idea from the beginning. Because if I had dreamt and my idea had been right, I wouldn't have built this. And I would have built a church that was open to expansion easily. So you have to examine the impact. You realize the original idea you started with has not helped you. So now you have to consider the impact so that when you start thinking again, you don't go and repeat the past mistakes. So he says, enlarge the place of your tent. Enlarge the foundation. Enlarge the core. Enlarge the basis. Thirdly, to enlarge the place of your tent means to redemarcate the boundaries of your vision. To redemarcate the boundaries of your vision. How far did you think your vision was going to go? Where were you expecting to be at? And let me tell you, my friends, many of us started life with very simple expectations from life. Very basic. Childhood visions. The Apostle Paul says, when I was a child, I thought as a child, I behaved as a child. When I grew up, I put away childish things. Unfortunately, sometimes your childish vision can also become your adult vision. And you find out that although you have grown, you are not fulfilling a grown-up's vision, you are fulfilling a child's vision. Because the basis of everything you have done is based on a childhood expectation. Let me give you an example. When I was a child, my vision for the future and for success was very basic. All I wanted was that I would grow up, find a job, start working, earn salary, and drink a lot of milk. In my mind, my vision was that what was going to give me real satisfaction was to grow up, collect salary, buy gari with sugar, water, get 1 tin of milk, make a big hole in the tin of milk, not a small one, a big one, and hold the tin of milk up and pour without stopping into the bowl of gari. I could always imagine myself I'm pouring the thing and the milk is going into the bowl and 1 tin full. For me, if I achieved that, I would be successful. That was my vision when I was about 6 years, 8 years, 10 years. The reason was because in my house, and I'm sure in your house too, milk was a measured commodity. I can always remember my mother. When she bought a tin of milk, she would make a hole on 2 sides of the top. Small holes, not big, small. They use a certain metal to pierce the 2 sides. And then when it was breakfast time, whether we're eating Tom Brown or Ekwegbemi or Cocoa, we line up. And you come with, we didn't measure in dessert spoon or tablespoon, it was teaspoon. So you bring your teaspoon, and she would pour to fill your teaspoon. And then you would go and put into your cereal, Tom Brown or Gary or whatever you were eating. And that was the milk. You didn't taste the milk, you just saw a white color. And that was it. And the sugar, she will bite the sugar. You get half, you get half. You put the sugar in. So my desire in life was to grow up. Eat as much sugar as I want. Drink as much milk as I want. And that was success. And do you know that childhood dream, if you don't change and redemarcate it, it will still be your dream. So you have adults today who are eating a lot of sugar. The doctor tells them it's not good for your blood, but they don't mind the doctor because the doctor has no idea the vision they are fulfilling. They are saying, I should stop eating sugar. I've eaten half sugar. Now that I've grown, I can eat sugar. I should stop eating sugar. So the doctor says, diabetes, be careful. They don't care. They put the sugar in. Then the milk. They say, milk is not good for your health. You are grown. You don't need. Hey, they don't care. They would rather drink the milk and die. So it's hurting their health, but they can't stop it. They are pouring the milk. They are eating the sugar. They are eating the meat. They are eating the chicken. Because when they were a child, they demarcated a vision of success for themselves. Now they are fulfilling their vision. They have grown, but the vision of their child, of their life, is a childhood vision. And many times we grow in life, but what we are trying to fulfill is not an adult vision, it's a childhood vision. Sometimes even the people you want to marry, they are not your adult desire, but your childhood fantasy. The girl in class 4 whom you liked and you wrote a letter to and she reported you to the teacher. You wrote a letter. Dear Rose, the brightness of this day has given me the opportunity and you wrote all those letters. Now, the reason you like Rose was because of the way Rose walked, or because of the way she smiled, or because of the color of her skin, or because of the way she made her hair, or something like that. You didn't get Rose in class 4, but Rose is your vision for life. So you grow up and you meet somebody who looks like Rose. You don't examine the character, you don't examine anything, because your fantasy is to marry that, and you marry it. And then you realize this it is really troublesome. You know why? Because you didn't redemarcate your vision. You didn't change the dimensions of your vision. You kept the old expectations from your childhood into your adulthood. Because, my friends, many times what we do in adult life is based on what we were expecting as children. That is why sometimes people grow up, they prosper, they make money, and they don't know what to do with the money again, because they have finished fulfilling their adult childhood vision. They've drank the milk, they've eaten the sugar. The rest, they don't know what to do with the money, so they waste the money because there's nothing to do with it. There's no vision for it. Their vision was for a child. What kind of vision do you have in life? What are you trying to achieve? And what is inspiring that vision? What has created the dimensions of your expectations in life? Is it your adult vision or your childhood dream? And if you don't redemarcate your vision, God may bring so much to your life, but you can't contain it. Because in your heart, you are too small. Inside you, you are too childish. And you can't contain the big thing. So he says to Israel, before you change your tent, go to the foundation. Redraw the foundation. And I can imagine what God meant. God meant is, go to look at your tent and then draw a new design on the ground. And say, my new tent, this is where I'm going to put it. I won't put it here. I put this here at a certain point in my life with a certain understanding, with a certain knowledge. But now I have grown. I understand life better. I have to redraw the boundaries. Because if you don't redraw, your vision will remain childish. God may want to do big things for you, but you can't accommodate it. The fourth thing you do to enlarge the place of your tent is that you have to realign your life with God's purposes. You have to realign your life with God's purposes. You have to make sure the new lines you are drawing are in line with the purposes of God for your life. My life today is very different from how I envisaged my life would be when I was young, when I was maybe in my teens, or even in my 20s, or my 30s. My life has changed dramatically right before my eyes. That means that whatever I envisaged when I was a teenager, I have to re-examine, is that the same thing driving me or something else? What I saw when I was young in my 20s, is that the same thing driving me or something else? What I saw when I started this church 25 years ago, is that the same driving me or something else? If it's the same thing, I may limit what God has called me to do, because he says you have to enlarge the place of your tent. 25 years ago, my vision was narrow. This time, my vision is bigger, so I have to change my foundation. It means I have to even change the way the church is structured. I have to change the way I do things in the church. I have to change the church. Otherwise, we will remain in the same old place, fulfilling an adolescent vision in an adult life. We have to change and realign. To receive the new things that God has for us, we must create new spaces to accommodate them. If you're going to receive the new things that God has for you, you must create new spaces. Spaces in your mind, spaces in your time, spaces in relationship, space all around you. You must create a space. Maybe when you were a child, you easily got offended when people mocked you or teased you. Now you have grown, and you know in adult life, you can't just get offended because people tease you. You can't go and blow people on the nose and kick people about. You can't do that. Sometimes you have people who work, adults in responsible positions in life, who fight. Somebody disagrees with your idea, and you go and hook them by the shirt and fight them like a class 3 boy. That's how you used to solve problems as a child, and you're solving problems the same way. You have to change and create a new space. Otherwise, you can't accommodate the next phase of your life. So the second thing God tells them to do, he says, stretch out the curtains of your dwellings. Stretch out the curtains of your dwellings. Enlarge the place of your tent. Stretch out the curtains of your dwellings. Everybody say stretch out. Say it again, stretch out. As a matter of fact, when you look into the Old King James and the New King James of this version of this writing, and they represent the original, it says it a little bit differently. It says, let them stretch out the curtains of your dwellings. Now, when I read it first, I thought it says, let them stretch out the curtains of their dwellings. But that's not what it said. It says, let them stretch out the curtains of your dwelling. Let them stretch out the curtains of your dwelling. Now, if somebody tells you, let somebody stretch out the curtain of your dwelling, it actually means you are not the one going to do the stretching. But something else outside you is going to put pressure on you and is going to stretch you. So you find most of the time stretching does not originate from you. It comes from outside situations, outside forces, painful situations, lifelong lessons that stretch you and make you a different person. Let them stretch out the curtains of your dwelling. Somebody is going to stretch you. Some situation is going to stretch you. Something is going to call you to a higher level. So how do we allow stretching to take place? Number one, you have to recognize the factors that hold you back. Why can't people stretch? Why can't people reach out? How can people know something is so close to them but they are unable to take it? It's because sometimes of fear, of laziness. For some people it's impatience. For some people it's pride. For some people it's their short temper. Some people it's their human relations. It keeps them from taking what is close to them. So you have to recognize the factors that hold you back. Because if you're going to stretch, nothing must hold you back. Nothing must keep you from stretching. You have to recognize the factors. Secondly, You have to remove all wrinkles that hide your potential. The idea here, when it says stretch out the curtains of your dwelling, is the idea of a curtain that is sagged. The curtain is there, but the fabric is sagged. And because it has sagged or is wrinkled, or it's crumpled, it is not stretching to its full length. So if you're going to stretch to the full length, you have to discover all the things that have folded you, that have kept you, that have sagged you, that weigh on you, so you don't reach out to your maximum. You have to remove all wrinkles that hide your potential. A wrinkle is a fold in a fabric that narrows the scope of the spread of the fabric. It makes a big thing look small. I have a few preachers outside Ghana who are not Africans. Some are American blacks or whites. My friends, I preach for them. And anytime I go to preach and they see the way I dress, I wear these big flowing garments all the time. And the question they ask me is, how do you pack this? In their mind, there's one particular preacher, he says, I need to see your suitcase. It's in a different garment. So he said, and make it a garment. So God said to Israel, there are some things you have kept together. They look small. In your eyes, they are small. But the reason they look small is because you have folded them. You have folded them. I want you to spread them out so people will see the size of the vision I have given to you. Because if you don't stretch them, nobody would see what you have. You have to remove the wrinkles. You have to remove the folds. And you have to determine the things that make your big ideas become small.